Are you struggling with how to move to the USA? Then keep watching as we are going to share 5 routes that you should consider.
We're contacted by a lot of our viewers asking us about their very specific scenario on how they're meant to get to the US. It's really difficult for us to answer each one of those individual minute differences. So in this video, what we've done is we've created some scenarios that hopefully cover everything.
I am going to answer the very specific scenario of what if the company that I had moved here on did not sponsor the move? What if I was in the situation of, after 5 years of working for that company, hoping that they're going to sponsor me on an employment-based visa, and that just didn't work out for whatever reason, and eventually I come to the conclusion, no, this isn't happening, it's not going to happen through that company. What would I have done in that case?
And I'm going to answer, what if Selena wasn't my golden goose?
It's golden ticket out of the UK. What would you have done? I'm very curious to know.
Thrown you in the bin and got a new one. Bought a different goose.
This is coming from a place of the knowledge we have today. So this is all stuff that we wouldn't have known years ago before going through the process ourselves. So we are truly going to use everything that we know now from other people that have moved here in order to kind of figure out what were the 5 things that we would have done between us.
Before we get into this, a critical part of this is your partner. So if you're with somebody and you don't necessarily believe in marriage, you're not married, it's something you will need to consider. It makes it significantly easier if you are married. Now, I'm not a big believer in marriage, but it saved us a lot of time and effort. The US are really strict over their dependent rules when you immigrate into the US. On top of that, there are massive financial benefits when you come here. The first route is sponsored employment-based visas. Sally, talk to us.
This is where you have a job offer and the employer is sponsoring you. So you're not self-petitioning in any way. You need a bona fide job offer. And in my case, talking to the scenario, so let's say 5 years at this company and they have not yet offered me a job in the USA. The first thing I would have done is probably worked out why I couldn't get a job before even considering going to another company, because I do think you have to be quite self-reflective in this. What is it that I'm not doing that's not getting me to the USA? Because if I'm seeing other people get jobs, there has to be a reason why they're picking those people and I seem to not be getting those jobs. Is it because those people are all software engineers and I'm not a software engineer?
Could be the relationships you hold with people.
Could be the relationships. Maybe I think I'm likable, but actually I just annoy everyone. I don't know. The other thing that's important to recognize in that moment is, even if you get feedback, let's say somebody points out to me, well, Selena, sometimes you're a bit abrupt, the way that you come across is not great.
I'd be surprised if they said that to you.
I would be surprised, but let's just say that does. Sometimes even if you do try to change your behavior, after being there for so long, it's really hard to change people's opinions of you because they're already formed. What I would probably do is take that feedback and just start somewhere else, because starting afresh where people don't know you and that's the first impression that they
gives
have.
you an elevated baseline. By taking that on and starting as that new person in another company, you're already seen as that person. Good advice.
Thank you. Once I've established that, I would still make sure that I target companies in the field that I'm in. So whether it's med tech, fintech, wherever I'm working in, I would target those companies and just start afresh and build the relationships, build the network that I need with the goal of still getting that role in the USA. It might take another few years, maybe 3 years of building those relationships, but the hope would be to get an L1A that way or a H1B visa, whatever type of visa is needed to move through. Oh, Anne, your golden goose isn't working out so well for you. What are you going to do? What sort of sponsorship are you going to
I already said get a different golden goose. All right, there's a couple of options. I have no issues with getting a degree later in life if that was the method that was going to suit me best. If I needed to get a degree to get into a different job, I would probably do that. However,
That's a lot coming from you, actually.
I know. The other option is, and we do know people that have come here without degrees, is just get into an international company. And truthfully, I spent a long time in a company because it suited me and I like the people and I like the culture. But if I didn't have my golden goose, I would have had to suck up the fact that I'm going to go to a company that I might not love and just start in an international company. I'm a technology person, so it'd be easy to transfer that in, make myself likable.
Which you are.
So I would do that and then I would talk somebody into giving me a job.
Which I also believe he would manage very easily. I guarantee you now there are people watching this that know Anne that are saying, yep, I actually fully believe that is very true.
Route number 2, That's the student or academic route. I'm not an academic. Are you, Sel?
I'm fairly academic, yeah. I'm very much the go to school. I wouldn't say book smart, but I can learn. I can definitely learn, pass exams, write essays, dissertations. So yeah, I guess I'm fairly academic. And that would have seriously been an option. If the employment-based visa did not work for either of us, we would have considered a student route. Personally, I know a lot of people that have moved to the USA through a student visa. So that's an F1 visa. And as long as you have a genuine offer in an academic institute, university, you can apply for that. It would have been a difficult decision to make financially because that would have meant 3 years or however long your course is where neither of us can work. So this is a critical point. The F1 visa holder can bring their dependents along. So I could have brought Ant along, which is fine, but he would not be allowed to work at all during that period. So financially, that is something we would have had to have planned for. Now, if I think about timing with the houses and everything, it's something that we could have worked out in terms of saving up for the move, taking out equity, selling the home as an example to cover us the next 3 years-ish.
What actually happened when we moved here is I didn't get my work permit for well over a year anyway. That is quite a daunting thing to think about if you don't have the knowledge that we have. I think the important part is we were 30s when this started. We'd already set up our life financially. We could have taken that financial impact. It wouldn't have been great. And with the knowledge that we know now, people are paid obscene amounts of money. So actually the way to look at the student route is if you can suck up a year to 3 years, especially if you're doing a postgrad, you might be able to do that in a year or 2 years. The payback is huge. So it's actually an investment. So suffering for a couple of years to actually be on a 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 salary, it's a pretty good return. It's an amazing return.
I would have definitely looked into a postgraduate degree or an MBA. It would have depended on what I was interested in and also what I could afford given the circumstance. Also looked into scholarships, whether it was fully covered in terms of the funding or partially covered. I know as a female, there are lots of programs where they're looking to sponsor women in business. So that's definitely something that I would have looked into as well.
Potentially there's another academic route. Let's say you're a doctor or a specialist in the field and you decide to do a PhD in that area. You might potentially be able to use a J education visa.
Which is actually better because your dependents can actually apply for a work permit.
Something else to consider with the student route, and whether this is you're going to start a degree later in life or you've already got a degree, is focus on the areas that the US needs. So for the last, I don't know how long, decade, and currently it's been STEM. So all of the sciences, IT, technology stuff is a massive focus. Don't do something they are not in need of. You're going to put yourself at a disadvantage. So even if you have your bachelor's, do a master's in something that is relevant to today. And if you're watching this video 10 years in the future, it might be completely different. It's probably going to be AI, most likely.
Still STEM.
It's still STEM, but maybe specifically target that area. And you're going to find it's a lot easier to get in here than something actually that's already saturated.
Once you have that degree, the last thing that we would focus on is how we then turn that into permanently living here in the USA. So once you're here, you obviously make contacts, you have a network. The hope is that you would be sponsored by an employer on a green card. If you do go down the STEM route, as Ant mentioned, they do offer you a 2-year work authorization after your degree has ended. So that just goes to show you the value of that particular area.
Route number 3, it's a self-petition employment-based visa, which is a mouthful, and I've had to try it 3 times, so you'll never get to see. I personally haven't looked into this one, but my guess would be it's for people that have either their own business or what's really popular at the moment, which is YouTubers. You don't have an employer. So the way that you would get in using this, my guess would be, you would be saying, I am going to bring either employment, skills, positively impact the local area or the state. Therefore, you want me to benefit the US.
That's not a bad guess at all. So this is the EB2-NIW, National Interest Waiver. So unlike number 1, where we spoke about the employment-based visa where an employer would sponsor you, this is self-petitioning, but you are coming here to work and drive business in some form. And this is typically for people that have extraordinary ability in arts, sciences, tech, but it can also be for people that have advanced degrees or businesses, so entrepreneurs out there as well. And the way that I see this visa is, it is a way for the USA to bring in talent and healthy businesses to the USA, and to Ant's point, positively impact the nation, the local area, the state.
Positively is probably just financially with the US. As long as you can financially gain. If their GDP goes up,
yeah, then you're coming. And this could work in the example if you're a doctor, a software engineer. So in our example of our scenarios, I would have genuinely tried to see if the education that I have, the skill set that I have, would have qualified me to get this EB2-NIW. Now, if Ant had become a software engineer as well, I know lots of cases where software engineers have been highly successful in getting this. And it's really about showing your experience at the company that you've worked for, what code you possibly have written. And it's an example, again, of areas which the USA highly values. So coding is one of those areas where they really want to bring that talent over here. They might not use the technology themselves, but they certainly want those people coming here to the USA.
I think the actual route that I would have taken wouldn't be dissimilar to what I was doing. So it would be around asset compliance, technology based. And I think compliance is becoming huge in the US. It should have been huge for a long time, but it's really not. They're not that compliant. And I think I could have probably found a way to get into the US by demonstrating that the UK and Europe are quite compliant countries, building some software or some way of managing that, building that into a business, and then finding a way out here, showing that actually we can help the US become more compliant using my skills.
Which does lead to the other ways through a business. So whether it would have been through what Anne just said there, asset compliance, also our YouTube channel, if we had that at the time, we probably would have seen if there was a way to utilize that to get the visa. And again, it's essentially you showing in very creative ways that you are of value, and you don't need to make a national impact. As long as you're making an impact locally, employing people, making money, they will seriously take you into consideration.
Routes 4 and 5 are the outlier options when all else fails. So the previous 3 scenarios, if none of those apply, you've tried them, it hasn't worked. Here's what we would have done. It might not apply to you, but this is us.
In my case, I would have looked into the diversity lottery. So my family are from Mauritius. I don't actually have Mauritian citizenship, but I certainly would have suddenly been applying. My mum keeps telling me to get my Mauritian passport, but I would have seriously have considered applying, because Mauritius is one of the countries that is on the list for the diversity lottery. And we actually know quite a few people that have watched this channel that have successfully got to the USA through a diversity lottery. So I would have 100% probably have got that and been applying every year.
I would have also tried that. So even though my family are from Jamaica, I would have been like, no, go back further. Where were we from? Is it on the list?
It is seriously worth you considering though. If you're in a couple, have a look at your backgrounds and have a look. There's a list that you can look at with all the countries that qualify for the diversity lottery. It's worth trying.
Maybe do a 23andMe, or what are those things called? Where you have your DNA check. Even if it's 1%, just go back.
Ancestry.com says.
And number 5 would be the family-based option. Now, I don't know these people, but apparently I have family that live in the US somewhere. I hope I haven't misremembered this.
What family do you
I'm
have?
sure they live in Florida. I'm sure that's what my parents told me. They live in Florida. I think one was a nurse and they came over years ago, probably 30 years. So even though I don't know them, I would have found their number, called them up, said, hey.
Can you please adopt me?
But no, it's a legitimate way of getting in. So if you do have family links, it's one of the longest methods. It could be 7 years plus from application to actually getting accepted. But I mean, if you start early enough, I started this in my 20s, it would have been here by now.
And honestly, you've got nothing to lose. If one of your goals or aims is truly to get to the USA and you do have a link somehow, even if it's going to take 7-10 years, it's worth trying.
Boom, finished. Like, comment, subscribe, we're out.